Elizabeth Bailey. This past winter, in the middle of the shutdowns and the school closings, hundreds of thousands of college students became essential workers. I was one of them. I was one of the lucky or unlucky, depending on your perspective, 7.78% of the American populace who the Bureau of Labor Statistics considered essential. There was no time to grieve for my old college life, no time to process the panic attacks I had when moving out of Sherwood in a hurry. There were bills to pay. Every morning, I put on a mask and made my commute to my job at a nature center, watching the same repetitive scenery out the window of my car and feeling myself settle into depressing monotony. Dark circles and shaky hands became my daily look. Over lunch, my coworkers and I sat in opposite corners of the office, hoarding hand sanitizer like it was made of gold, and talking in hushed tones about the terrible things we saw on the news. Then we would go out and greet the public with a smile. Be sure to smile with your eyes, corporate instructed us, because the mask hides your mouth. Never before have I been so exhausted, and I know that I'm not the only one. My experience as an essential worker became my first-hand account of compassion fatigue. 2020 was the year when compassion fatigue became more than just an obscure definition in a psychology textbook. It became our reality. If we are to learn anything from this past year, it must be how to endure, how to make compassion sustainable, because we cannot fix anything if we are too tired to care. We face this challenge by defining compassion fatigue, combating apathy, and acknowledging the burden it puts on us. The exact definition of compassion fatigue is often debated, but the American Institute of Stress, yes, that is a real thing, defines it best. According to them, when you are exposed to nothing but suffering, caring becomes exhausting. Compassion fatigue swept the nation in 2020. It was reflected in overworked moms whose kids were suddenly at home 24/7, in cashiers who work on their feet and are at risk every day, in the blank eyes of students on a Zoom class. It's similar to the burnout that we expect from academics, though we never imagined it would follow us beyond a Moodle page. It's what you feel when the voices of the newscasters reading infection rates and numbers of the dead and climate reports and accounts of police brutality become background noise. 2020 was full of that feeling, a physical, overwhelming weariness that brings your empathy to the brink. Depression and anxiety spiked in 2020, especially among people our age, with Mental Health America estimating a 40% uptick in diagnoses among college students. If acknowledging the world feels like defeat, not acknowledging it feels like surrender. So, now that we know what it means, what do we do about it? Well, once we acknowledge fatigue, we can turn ourselves to combating apathy. Over break, if you can call it that. I remember watching the world change for the worse live on the news every night, and all I could think in my exhausted state was, I have to get up for work in the morning. The same thought that was echoed in everyone else a part of that 7.78%. And although our work exhausted us, at least we had work. If you were not working or could not work, I know you must have felt it too. The way each horrifying headline slowly became the new normal. This exhaustion builds apathy, makes you want to stop caring. It is surprisingly easy to accept, especially when you see others who fail at their basic responsibilities. When you are doing everything right, wearing your mask, staying at home, donating to wildfire relief or protest bail bonds, watching others who just don't seem to get it can be, let's say, frustrating. When your classmate wears their mask below their nose, or your Facebook friends spout conspiracy theories, or the Kardashians throw an extravagant party at which no social distancing takes place, it can be so tempting to say, damn it all, if they don't care, why should I? Believe me, I understand. I once had a patron tell me it didn't matter if she wore a mask in my building or not because no one else was there, because apparently workers aren't people. Sometimes I tell myself if I get one more email about unity in a time when we have never been more divided, I might just lose it. But, even though it is difficult, you have to remember that it's possible to hold people accountable for their actions, to join a movement, to change minds, to do whatever you think your part has to be. That being said, it is only possible if you still care. There is no saving a world that you've already given up on. Apathy drains you. It feeds the exhaustion. By fighting it off, you give yourself more energy to care. We fight it by acknowledging the burden. You can't fix a problem if you won't admit that it's there. Pretending that compassion is easy helps no one. Neither does shaming yourself when you stumble and fall. As any good doctor will tell you, work requires rest. In fact, the American Medical Association recommends taking breaks from media when possible. So do not blame yourself when the numbers on the television begin to blur. Taking time for yourself, be it a day, a minute, or a breath, any time you can get, is beneficial in the long run. You do yourself and others no favors by running on empty. To address the challenges that 2020 brought to light, we must be well taken care of. Real action is required to address the flaws that brought us here, but movements are generally more successful when piloted by people who have slept. There will be days when it's all too much. Such is the reality of existing in a world in crisis. It is neither compassionate nor productive to push yourself anyway. Step aside, take a breath, and get support so that later, if someone else needs it, you can give support. The world does not change on the back of one person making a martyr of themselves, and it's okay to remind yourself of that. The challenges of 2020 have no expiration date. They did not vanish when the clock hit midnight in Times Square, as much as we may have wished they did. In order to endure the lasting damage, the aftershocks, we need to keep caring. Compassion has to be sustainable through this year and beyond. Compassion is hard work. Caring about the world is hard work. Caring about yourself is even harder. I won't pretend that it isn't. But anything worth having is hard work. When you are bombarded by this much pain and suffering, collapsing is easy, but to stand and to keep standing is a revolutionary act. Rest assured that by knowing the issue, by combating apathy, and by acknowledging the struggle, we can keep compassion fatigue at bay. Do not begin to imagine that we are incapable of doing so. We are capable. Compassion is, after all, essential work. Thank you.